So tropical deforestation is a major change. That deforestation is not only the principal driver of extinction, it also contributes 15% of the carbon dioxide to the atmosphere each year. That's more carbon emissions from all the cars and trucks, not only in the United States, it's more carbon emissions than all the cars and trucks in the entire world. Tropical deforestation is a very big piece of our global climate problem. The problem, as far as species extinctions are concerned, is that tropical forests are where the wild things are. It's where the greatest number of species are to be found. This is that map showing the number of species of amphibians. You can see what a profoundly disturbing map this is. It just doesn't look right, does it? I grew up in Britain, which has a vast total of 3 species of amphibians. You can go to parts of Ecuador and find 130. It's fairly clear that where the forests are where there are species of amphibians. If you look at what's happening to deforestation in the New World, you'll see that in addition to losses in the northern Andes and the Caribbean and parts of Mexico, there's been a huge amount of deforestation in that other rainforest of Brazil, what we call the Atlantic coast forest of Brazil, the southeastern part of the continent. It's going to be the center of much of my talk. If you look at biodiversity, we know that there are very few species, in this case, of birds in Canada. We Americans have trouble with Canada. We can never remember the name of the Prime Minister. They have strange habits, like having universal health care and counting all the votes in a general election. But we are not to worry about Canada because when it comes to biodiversity, they are at the bottom of the American League. Things get exciting when you start speaking Spanish and get really exciting when you start speaking Portuguese. But what's the map on the right? The map on the right shows half of all the species of birds. But it's half of all species of birds arranged in terms of their geographical range. Imagine that we have an audience that contains some height-challenged people over here and the Duke basketball team by the door. And we line them up in terms of their height, and somewhere in the middle of the room there is the 50th percentile, so that half the people are smaller, half the people are larger. Now let's do that with geographical ranges. So we have things with small ranges over here, large ranges over here. The map on the right is where the half of all species with small geographical ranges are to be found. And they are found in odd places. They are found in the Sierra Madres of Mexico. They are found in the northern Andes. They are found in this coastal strip of forest right here. They're found in the Guyanas. These are the places where Mother Nature has put her eggs in a relatively small number of baskets. Species with small ranges are more vulnerable to extinction. It's easier to drive a species to extinction if it has a small range than it has a large one. Pattern of mammals, much the same. There's a lot of mammals in South America, but the places where mammals with small ranges are concentrated are in a few idiosyncratic places. Where species with small ranges collide with lots of habitat destruction, lots of deforestation. If you compare those two maps at the top and imagine slamming them together, where the red of deforestation meets the the concentration of species with small ranges, you find that where species are going extinct in the greatest numbers are a relatively few places. And in the Americas, it's this coastal strip of forest. So if we're going to save biological diversity, we better get on that aeroplane to Rio de Janeiro, the one that Dr. Marker came in on last night because they weren't able to come in via Europe because of some Icelandic volcano that was venting its wrath against the British Isles. The British, you may recall, have been quite unpleasant to the Icelanders over some money that they owe, and it's only a matter of time before somebody tells you it's a conspiracy. You heard it here first. So who works in these areas? I am unimpressed with much of how conservation is funded. I have to tell you that we have, along with the World Bank, a colleague at the World Bank, we've actually looked at how the World Bank funds conservation, and they don't do a bad job. But the World Wildlife Fund doesn't work in conservation in coastal Brazil. Conservation International and the Nature Conservancy have very small presences there. So if we're going to save species from extinction, this isn't something as scientists, this isn't something as activists that we can simply let the big conservation groups do. I call them the bingos for big NGOs. Biodiversity is too important to leave to the bingos. And what I want to talk about are three things. I'm going to talk about the success of local initiatives. I'm going to talk about the importance of indigenous groups and how they protect the forest. And I'm going to talk about how Norway is saving the world. And since Norway is saving the world, I think this is going to appeal, I hope, to your patriotism so that you will rise up and think, well, we as Americans ought to be saving the world too. If you map out where species of birds are found, this is what coastal Brazil looks like. Endemic birds are those birds found only in this area. These are places where there are a lot of species with small geographical ranges. You know, nature's eggs, the ones that are most vulnerable. And we can do this for birds because the world is full of millions, probably tens of millions of people who are passionate about identifying birds. There are nowhere near so many people who express such passion for nematodes.